Hey guys, and welcome to the Garage Athlete Show with myself and Daniel Frazier. Just a little bit of an update as to why I'm in my little girl's room, as you guys can see behind me. Unicorns and princesses. She's not very well, so she's currently asleep in my bed, which is across the hallway. So if I have to dash off, I can't leave her up here on her own. So yeah, I've got to be sat in here and try not to make too much noise because she's having a nap. So yes, if I have to disappear off because she comes through, she'll probably be making a cameo at some point in this episode today. But yeah, it's myself and Dan. Gonna go through a few questions. There's something I wanted to talk about in terms of like training, and we'll probably get a bit of an update on the life of Dan. Now he's back to being working. Is it full time or part time? You're still working.
So I don't define your hours of full time. Yeah, I suppose full time. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Fair enough. So the girls are at childminders. How many days now?
They're there 4 days a week now. We was 3, but I moved them up to 4 because I just find 2 of them at once pretty hard. So I was like, I'll pay for it just to go another day. So I've got them in there 4 days a week. So that opens up my diary 4 days a week plus the online stuff. So I'm probably at max of what I can handle at the moment with all of that. But yeah, we're sort of trying to find that balance, which is always unbalanced, but trying our best. How about you?
Yeah, things are kind of getting back to a level of normality then after obviously you had COVID. Well, it was COVID and then the twins, and then it just, I don't know, like in my business seems to be kind of like settling down. Like the big one for me is going to be September when Willow goes back to nursery, not back to nursery, goes back to school, because I'm still looking after her on a Monday and she's off on a Wednesday. So like, as much as my missus likes to say that she lets me work on a Wednesday, because that's her day off with Willow, I'm not like, I'm not able to get stuff done. If she's in the house, it's a fucking nightmare to try and get anything done because it's could you just? And it's like, it gets really irritating because it's like, in my head, I'm like, are you assuming that I'm just not doing anything? Like, I'm sat here in the middle of something. Oh, could you just? And then she gets annoyed when I don't do it straight away. And it's like, yeah, because I'm right in the middle of a task. Like, you need to wait for me to finish what I'm doing. And then, yes, I can, yes, I can do that. However, you need to give me 20 minutes to finish what I was doing. But yeah, how are you finding it with Mads being back at work?
Yeah, tough. Just trying to work out logistics of everything. Like, I still have to look after them on a night post school, so I have to pick them up from the childminders and the kids. So having 3 kids on your own for like 2 hours, it's like you're like counting down the hours for them to get back into for Mads to come back home. So it's still pretty hard. Like, you think it's gonna get easier because they're at the school, because they're the childminders, but nah, man, it's like there's always one that's all right, one that's not, and it's just chaos is my life. I should describe it.
I can imagine. I've obviously the 2 boys are older, so they can generally take care of themselves. However, they both like to wind up Willow. So I'll be in the kitchen trying to like cook tea, and all I hear is just screeching because like Josh has managed to wind up Willow and she's like smacked him one or something like that, even though he's 12. And then he comes through and just, right, what's going on? Well, Willow did this, that. And I'm like, she's 3. Like, don't try and make it out that it's her fault. She's 3. Like, you're the responsible one in that situation. You should be managing that. Oh, yeah, it's a nightmare. He's very much in that pre-teen stage where he's pushing, because he's year 7 now. He thinks he's up at secondary school. He thinks he's a lot older / bigger than he is, and it's like pushing the boundaries like massively, just really, really testing it out, and then like wonders why his mum then flips out at him, because it's just what you do when you're 12, 13, isn't it? You just
every age has got its own challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Ben's going to be 18 in April. Wow. Yeah, that's so he's trying to figure out what he's going to do after his A levels now. I think he's applying for an apprenticeship in something in the MOD, but
Oh, cool.
like he's a very quiet kid. Like he doesn't really talk. So like if you sat in the car, it'll be dead silence for that entire trip. He won't talk. However, me and him have got loads in common. He loves superheroes, he loves Lego and all that kind of stuff. Like he's more innocent than the 12-year-old. Like still into kind of like all that stuff. So yeah, it's
personalities, isn't it? You can already tell
yeah.
personalities from a very early age.
Yeah, 100%. And Willow just knows what she wants, and if they don't do it, she screams at them. So that's the benefit of having two older brothers. You get your way most of the time. Are you back? Oh yeah. How was your gig? I saw you did some. Was it 2 gigs over the weekend?
Yeah, it was mint actually. It was 2 guys I've not played with before. There's like a Facebook group I'm part of where you sign up and people are like, "Oh, can I have a drummer for the weekend, please?" And you're like, "Yes, you can." And it was good, man. They were 2 really good musicians. I kind of just dropped in and went for it, and it was great. I had a really good time. I'm kind of going balls deep back into drumming because I didn't do it for so long. I'm not competing or lifting the way I was, so like drumming's the new thing. Although I'm back in the gym though. Like
Nice.
I've had a couple of weeks of a few like 4 sessions a week, so I'm enjoying that again. Very different to how I used to train, but it's just good to get moving again. So yeah, the pieces are slowly coming back together.
Nice. It's nice that you've been able to find that almost passion for training again. So I know you lost it for a little while, and it was just like it's not a priority for me right now. And again, that was fine. And you've taken some time away. You've got another hobby, as in your drumming, and now it's coming back in. And you're getting on with it. So sometimes it is okay to take a break and to kind of like not train. Like I know for me, since competing, like my training in terms of intensity and progress has been up here. The last like 2 or 3 weeks, like physically making amazing progress. Like I got the 50 kilo dumbbells up for a set of 8 the other day in dumbbell chest press. Like that's like a new PB. I think I hit a PB in terms of like deadlift, like loads of lifts. My body is doing really, really well, but mentally just completely checking out of the process. It's just like, oh fuck, like I was going at it with the same intensity as I was when I was in prep. And basically I burnt out a little bit. However, I just started my mini cut yesterday. So like my calories dropped from like 3,700 to like 2,200 in a day, doing as much cardio like as I can, because essentially we're looking to pull off like 5, 6, 7 kilos over 4 weeks. Just like a really, really, it's what people would call a crash diet. We're doing that on purpose. To
you've
pull
given
off.
it a proper term. It's good for you.
Yeah, it's a mini cut, so therefore
it's a mini cut. I'm not crash dieting. It's a mini cut. I love that.
Yeah, I think
for like years everyone was like proper against drastic calorie diets. I was like, this is terrible. It's slow and steady. It's the only way. It's the only way. They're literally like saying people a year later, well, mini cuts what it's about. You're like, oh, okay, so you just worded it better. It's like, okay, they do have their places. I do understand them, but I love the time. It's like we've given it a name now. It's a mini cut.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one of those things where I've never done one before, because I was always in that camp of slow and steady is better, blah blah blah, and we're trying it out, one, to see if mentally I can cope with it. Like that's the big thing, is that for 4 weeks straight now there'll be no cuts, no cheats, no deviating from the diet, like at all. So it's not a balanced approach, and that's why it's not appropriate for most people, because most people can't live like that. But the idea behind it is obviously short, sharp, get in, get out, get back into a surplus. And I get married in April, so I'm back up at like the heaviest I've been at just over 80 kilos. I've started snoring. Like the health effects of kind of being heavy have started to kind of like kick in. So it was either keep calorie, when we were reversing out, it was keep calorie / composition low and basically like maintain for about 10 weeks, because I hit like the 75 kilo mark like very quickly, or we kind of kept going up and then do this short, sharp, aggressive like pull down so that I'll still fit into my wedding suit. Because I got measured when I was like 75 kilos. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I've not felt hunger like this basically since I was in prep for like 4 months now. And it's because my calories have just gone, psh. So I've dropped like 2 kilos in a day. I think that most of that's from like food volume though, because I was eating so much food before and I've just cut it in half. Obviously water and glycogen, because obviously I trained last night and I was on the bike for half an hour as well. So like what we always talk about of these like drastic weight drops, when you do like a crash diet, and it's exactly what's happening. That's why I've dropped 1.5 kilos, 2 kilos in a day, because there's not as much food in my system. My glycogen and my water have just all kind of like shot out. But I know to expect that. And I know that when I then start eating properly again, at least 2-3 kilos will probably come back on very, very quickly. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this works, whether, as I said, I can deal with it mentally, whether my performance suffers too much, like how quickly I can kind of get back to those peak levels of strength again, kind of like afterwards, if I've pulled off a decent chunk of body fat, and whether performance really, really tanks, in which case it's going to be one of those things where it's probably not the best thing for me to do. It's probably better for me to like essentially stay fatter for longer, and then do like a slow, basically just do a really, really extended prep, kind of like I did before. Because again, if we can do this well now, what it would do is then if I then go to prep again next year, if I'm up at 83 kilos, do a mini cut to pull me back down to the mid 70s, then pull food back up for a few weeks before then kind of going into a prep, so like a pre-prep diet. Rather than starting at 83 and having to get to under 70, which means then I'm dieting for like 9 months. It'd be like a mini cut for a month or two off, and then diet for say like 4 months.
Yeah.
So that it's less. Yeah, I don't want to be dieting for 9 months again. That was fucking awful.
It's a long time, mate.
Yeah.
I mean, you do it because you have to, but it's a tough slog, that.
Yeah. So first of the questions you've got for today is from Joseph Lavelle. I hope I've said that right. So this might be a controversial one, but as a coach, what's more annoying? A client who says they're only eating 1,200 calories a day and tracking everything, but can't lose weight, or a client who says they eat all the time, but can't gain any size?
I think as a coach, or if you're helping anyone ever, even if someone's like a mate that's asking some advice, like, you know, most people that lift weights get asked questions by their mates about how to train. You're kind of, the way you got to look at it is like a problem solver. So you're looking for solutions to problems. Don't do that when you're trying to talk with your missus, though. They're not looking for solutions; they just want to be heard. But for when you're coaching, you're looking for trying to solve problems. So, I mean, if they're saying they're not eating a lot, but they're still gaining weight, then it's like, okay, well, something's not working here. Let's have a look at all the factors of your life we can, you know, analyze. So it could be macros, could be, you know, feeding frequency, could be, I found stress is a much bigger blocker of fat loss than you think, you know. Like I've got some clients who are on calories where I'm not comfortable to put it any lower. Even for me, it's on the low end, but then more often than not, they're just stressed like through the roof. And then if we can reduce that stress, that was it cortisol, then we suddenly see the fat loss kicking again. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's more, it doesn't frustrate me anymore, because, you know, when people come to see me, that's probably what they say. Oh, I eat all this and all that. But, you know, if you can sort of sit with them and sort of explain very, you know, simply what's in things, the amount of things, you know, that kind of stuff, then they start to see it themselves. They suddenly get that sort of aha moments, like when you start tracking macros for this first time, you're like, wow. My favorite is when they go, I didn't know that was in that, or like, how much? Like when you have your little, I don't know, your full bar of dairy milk, whatever, you know, the pound ones you get, you know, some people just inhale that in a night. They're like, you know, just ingested like, you know, say what, 500-600 calories like straight off the bat there. Whereas people aren't really that, they're not aware. And I think mindful eating is a really important one. I think people don't eat mindful enough, where they just kind of, it's in, they've forgotten about, watching something or quickly get it in, and before they know it, they ingested far more calories than what they think. So yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be a douche, but it's not that frustrating. And the one's not worse than the other. Personally, it's kind of, all right, well, that's what we've got to deal with. Let's see what we can do to help.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like in both those situations, it's probably right. Let's jump on a call and let's kind of like run through it. So then I'd ask them to bring their food diary kind of like with them, and we'd like run through it. So say for breakfast they have like toast. Okay, is there any butter on that toast? Yeah. Have you recorded the butter? Oh no, I haven't. Do you have any sort of spread on it? Is it just bread? Oh yeah, I have jam. Have you recorded it? Well, no. Okay. Might get to your lunchtime meal. Okay, I've had, say, chicken salad. Okay, did the salad have a dressing on it? Yeah. Did you record it? No. So there's often lots of like little things like, right, do you drink tea or coffee? Yes. Did you record the milk? No. Sauces and all this kind of stuff, that they're all adding in little like pockets of calories that, unless you're used to tracking and used to looking out for those things, it can be very, very easy to kind of like miss them out. So it's talking to them about the accuracy. So are they weighing things when they're tracking it, or are they kind of going by eye? Because by eye, the human brain is programmed to eat in a slight surplus. If you think about it, like our brain doesn't know food is abundant. It just knows that we need to survive for as long as possible. So its natural state is to eat in a slight surplus so that you've got extra for when food isn't abundant. So yeah, when you're trying to like intuitive eat, or like trying to like measure things like by eye, you're always going to eat slightly more than you need to. And also we overestimate how many calories we burn during exercise and underestimate how many calories are in it. So just like Dan said, when people actually start tracking and scanning and doing proper portion sizes, and they go, holy shit, like I did not realize like this was so calorie dense. Like, well, what can I kind of like swap it out for? And that's where then making swaps and stuff when somebody's kind of trying to lose is really, really helpful. Like I eat all the time but can't gain any size. To me, that's normally a beginner that says that, because, well, 9 times out of 10, it's the skinny kid at the gym that's like, I eat loads and I can't gain any size. And then you kind of go through their diet and it's like, right, they've got like 80 grams of protein in the whole day. Like they're eating like 100 150 grams of carbs. It's like, yeah, you need to up those numbers and pick more calorie dense stuff, because they're trying to eat healthy or eat clean like the whole time. And you can get like, I was eating 3,500 4,000 calories of clean food, and that is a lot of food. Like when you're trying to eat that amount of food from like nutrient dense sources, you will feel full and you will feel not great, because you're almost force feeding. And that's when then you can add things in like adding some olive oil to your rice, or having some dark chocolate at night, or some like more calorie dense things to kind of help bulk that out. So yeah, in both those situations, 9 times out of 10, it's about communication and getting the person to understand that while they think they might be doing a thing, it's more just likely, right, we need to get you more accurate with how you're tracking these things, and therefore being able to kind of like make the changes necessary to see the results that you want. I think that about covers that. So what I wanted to cover was intensity versus volume in terms of like training. Obviously, well, for both strength and hypertrophy, because I got into a discussion with somebody the other day, because I was talking about like my own training and saying about how I'd implemented some like higher rep range stuff, so some higher volume techniques. And he was saying, no, it's all about progressive overload, all about intensity, like it's one or the other. Whereas I'd say actually it's probably a combination of both if what you're after is hypertrophy, because getting strong in all those ranges is what's going to help kind of like build muscle. When you say about shocking the muscle, I hate that term, but I think what they mean is to give it novel stress that it's not had before. It doesn't need to be changed every single week, but if you've been running a lot of high intensity blocks, maybe doing some higher volume work is going to be a shock to the system. It's going to be different. It's going to be new. Therefore, your body's then kind of going to have to adapt to it. Same thing if you've been doing lots of high volume work, like all the time, maybe doing some higher intensity work again is going to be enough of a shock to the system to kind of like start it to grow. So in terms of like, obviously you deal a lot with like powerlifters and athletes in general, like, would you say that's the same for kind of like in strength sports, or is it more like you just work with intensity?
Yeah, I mean, the game is different depending on your goal. I mean, I would argue if you're a bodybuilder, you have no business working, above, for simplicity's sake, 85% for some heavy reps. I think the trade-off is too much in terms of what you can potentially get from doing those big, heavy stuff. Like when you see your favorite bodybuilders do it, they know what they're doing. Like we had that, I forgot his name, that Scottish chap on, who's like insanely strong but huge. But they kind of know the risk. He knows the risk he's taking by doing those, great top, really intense sets in terms of like the reps of like 5 and under, but he just loves doing it, so he just carries on. But in terms of if we were looking at purely from what is your goal, it's not really needed. So flipping the coin, as a powerlifter, as a strength athlete, how important are these huge sets of 10 and crazy amounts of volume and working in lower intensity? I mean, there used to be this big school of thought where, well, it's not used to. Some people still do it, and it still has its place of working with lighter percentages, doing your hypertrophy blocks, doing like sets of 10, those are the sets of 8, like even sets of 12, that kind of stuff, and it has its place. But I guess I'm more along the lines of now I would rather get people working, doing, not really going over sets of 8. I don't really prescribe for the main lifts anything over 8, mainly 5s and lower, but I would rather lift a bit more frequently with a bit higher percentage. But instead of doing like 5 sets of 10 in a session, I'd probably spread that 10 sets over the course of a week, but with a higher intensity, because I'm more interested in getting people strong necessarily in growth. But I also do some guys I'm trying to put on size as well, so I would, flip it to the other side where you wouldn't necessarily spread it out over the week as much. You would put it in the day. We're talking maybe like 8-9 sets in a day on the body part we would work on. So I think Don's run off to go check on his little girl who was sleeping. So I'm sat looking at a bedroom screen of a kid's little room. She right? Hey, there she is.
Here she is. She's just woken up after a 4-hour nap.
Oh,
you say hi to Dan.
Hello, sweetie.
Not very well, are you? No.
You're doing
So
really good.
We had vomiting yesterday, and then she woke up this morning and was like, "So, do you feel like you can go to nursery?" Yeah. And then gave her a drink of water, and she was like, "Nope, gonna be sick."
Oh, poor girl.
So then,
she's willing, eh?
About half an hour later, she was like, "Right, I'm off to sleep, Daddy." I was like, "Okay." And that was at about 8 o'clock this morning, and she's just woken up. So, yeah, she needed it. You're okay, sweetheart? Yeah. I'm going to get you some.
What was I talking about?
Strength.
So, yeah. So I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Where were we? Yeah, because you
said about if you're going to do like 5 sets of 10, you'd spread out.
And then I said if I was doing bodybuilders, I would still probably put like, maybe like 8 sets in a muscle group in a session. But because the intensity isn't as high, you can kind of get away with doing more. Like, I don't think nearly sets of like 10 plus are as fatiguing as a heavy set of 5 below. I think they kind of really start to pay a price, whereas I think you can kind of get away with a bit more volume, especially if you're accustomed to it as well. Then the argument is, yes, you can grow off if you're a bodybuilder, and there might be a time and a place for it. You can grow off sets of 5 and less, but you're going to have to do work a shit ton harder with heavier weight for a lot more sets, and there's going to be a lot more risks that come with it. When say instead of doing 8 sets of 4 with, like, 80, well, that's still really fucking hard to say, eight sets of 4, like say 75%, why don't you just do 4 8s with around 60 or so, around 60 of your max, and still get the same result in terms of muscle growth, or produce, again, the training effect to elixir muscle growth. So there's a kind of a reason I find most bodybuilders are in those rep ranges in general population. It's because it has its less risk, and it's time and tested. It works, and it doesn't have the same amount of problems, particularly if you're paying close attention to your form, not ego lifting and working sensibly. Then there's just no real need to go crazy heavy all the time. I mean, like, and you just came off a training, but didn't you, when you sort of went back to deadlifting for a bit, and you still got good gains from the higher rep ranges, but then you go for a phase where you're trying to bump up your strength just so you increase your 1 rep max. So technically you should be, in theory, be able to lift more when you go back to the higher rep ranges, right?
Yeah. So I think that's the idea. Like, I don't venture below 6 reps very often. But it's more every now and again, I will just test to kind of like see where one rep max is. Because if I'm doing, as I said, like a heavy set of say 6, I will try to take that weight up to a set of say 10 before jumping up 5 kilos and trying to get say anywhere between like 4 to 6, and the next week it's then 7 and then 8. But like you said, like, I haven't done a deadlift off the floor in, trying to think, like 3 or 4 years. It's always been off blocks or rack pulls or things like that. So I just heard a door go. But then I pulled a PB 1 rep max, and I probably had one more in the tank, but I just didn't want to risk it because I haven't done like a max effort set in so long. I didn't want to take it all the way to RPE 9 or RPE 10. Because again, that's where you then run the risk of injuring yourself. You okay, sweetheart? You just need a cuddle. You want to go downstairs? We'll wrap this up in a minute, and then we're going to go downstairs. Is that okay? No? Okay. Yeah, she's feeling a bit sorry for herself. Yeah, she needs some Calpol. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think there's a high. I was reading something, I can't remember what it was on, but it was by, I can't remember the name of the researcher either, which isn't going to be very helpful. But they were basically saying they did some testing, and it's essentially that your muscle doesn't know the difference between failure. So failure at 10 reps and failure at 30 reps elicit the same response kind of like within the muscle, which I agree with up to a point, but then you're massively taking out then the stimulus of mechanical tension and just load in general, which I think it's one of those things. I think they all have their place, they all have their point. But like you said, the risk to reward ratio when you take those reps like under 5, especially with bodybuilding sort of exercises or anything where it's like an isolation exercise, just not worth it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, they're fun, and I still want to do them now. I still have a marriage to certain exercises I don't think I'll ever get away from. So my way of dealing with it is to just not do the lifts. Like, don't do a squat, don't do a deadlift. I can do other things. But it's yeah. I mean, if muscle growth is your prime goal, then volume is one of the biggest things to do to get better. I mean, Dorian Yates did pretty well off his high heavy duty sort of training, didn't he? Like, yeah, we're not saying you can't make gains off that super intense, sort of standard linear progression. Yeah, of course you can. But at the same time, from a more voluminous approach, you can kind of, make maybe the same, if not potentially better gains without the risks that come along the intensity, the super intense kind of training.
I think with high intensity training, you've got to control a lot more of the variables. So someone like Dorian or someone like JP, like literally everything is controlled. Like every gram of food that goes into their body is the best quality. They knew exactly where it came from. The drugs that they were taking, they were the best quality. They knew what they were. Their sleep, their stress management, their entire life revolves around that pursuit of those micro gains. But then you then look at like Jordan Peters' career as a bodybuilder. He's a phenomenally successful coach, but his career as a bodybuilder, not so much. Now, if he had changed up his training style slightly, maybe he would have been able to avoid like blowing out his stomach as much, because what you see with a lot, so like I'm just trying to think of a lot of some of the top guys at the moment, like Ian Valier, Nick. I always forget their surnames. A lot of the top bodybuilders built this base in strength through doing like high intensity, progressive overload style training until they kind of get to a certain point, and then they tend to switch to a slightly higher volume approach. Like when they're like 4 or 5 years like into their pro careers, and it's whether they would still make as good a progress if they did that switch earlier, or whether they actually need that foundation in the strength that they built through doing that high intensity version of training to then be able to elicit the response that they can then get from the higher volume approach, because they've got this strength. Like anybody who's doing sets of 15 to 20 with what the average person would struggle. So you can do a set of 20 with 50 kilo dumbbells, like that's insane, the level of strength and the level of force and just the tonnage that you're moving. So I think it's probably a combination of the two. Like I think you have to do both kinds of training at like certain points. You okay? No, you're gonna be sick? No. Do you drink? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to wrap it up.
Yeah, no problem, man. But yeah, I think
you said goodbye to Dan.
Why don't we maybe next week? I think we might have a guest, or the week after. We'll keep developing on that, because it's a fascinating subject. I think we could spend a whole podcast on. So we'll develop that a bit more next time, man. Absolutely.
Okay. You say bye-bye to everybody who's listening. Say bye-bye. You can speak.
Bye.
Oh dear.
So,
for those of you that want to get a guest appearance from Willow, make sure you check us out on YouTube as well.
Amazing. Right. You better shoot.
No worries.
Speak soon. We'll catch you next week, buddy.
I'll catch up next week. I'll see you guys later, and thank you to everyone for listening. Sorry it was a short episode, but you've got plenty of backlog to go and listen. There's like over 70 of them. So thank you to everyone who is listening, and we will see you again next week.
Bye.
No worries. Bye.